It's a quiet Thursday night in the city. The art gallery's motion sensors hum in the dark, the walls lined with priceless works by masters. But when morning comes, the staff rushes in to discover that the most famous painting hasn't been touched. Instead, the thieves stole something that most visitors barely glanced at, a dull, almost forgettable canvas that had hung in a corner for decades. It wasn't worth millions. It wasn't even insured. So why did someone risk everything to take it? This is the story of the heist that wasn't about art at all. Before we dive into the story, subscribe to the channel for more crime stories like this. Now let's begin. The Aldridge Museum sat on the edge of the financial district. It wasn't the Louvre or the Met, but it had a respectable reputation. It displayed a modest but carefully curated collection, Renaissance portraits, Impressionist landscapes, and a few modern pieces that critics described as intriguing more than inspiring. But in Gallery 4, tucked into a side hall that most patrons walked past, hung a canvas no larger than a family portrait. It was a washed-out scene of a river, painted in muted browns and grays. The plaque beneath it read simply, "Unknown artist, circa 1890." Employees joked that it was the ugly duckling of the museum. Few people stopped to look at it, and the piece was valued at less than $1,000, pocket change compared to the multi-million-dollar works nearby. And yet, this was the painting the thieves came for. The heist was carried out with precision. At 2:14 a.m., the alarm system briefly flickered offline, just for 20 seconds. Later, investigators would discover that the external server had been looped into a false data feed. Whoever did this knew the system intimately. At 2:17, three figures in black entered the gallery through a maintenance door. Surveillance footage showed them moving quickly, confidently, with the kind of ease that suggested practice, or inside information. They ignored the halls of priceless artwork. No hesitation, no wasted time. Straight to Gallery 4. One thief lifted the dull river painting off the wall while another sliced it free of its frame. Within 90 seconds, they were gone. When the night guard finally noticed something was wrong, it was too late. The thieves had vanished into the city. No alarms had sounded, and no police had been alerted. But what baffled everyone was what they took. The next morning, museum staff scrambled to assess the damage. They couldn't believe what was missing. The Vermeer was untouched. The Monet was untouched. Even the safe containing rare manuscripts was still sealed. All gone was a painting most people didn't even like. Reporters had a field day. "World's worst art thieves," one headline mocked. Others speculated that maybe the thieves had panicked and taken the wrong piece. But the detectives assigned to the case didn't laugh. Something about it felt deliberate. On paper, the painting was worthless. It had been donated in 1954 by a wealthy estate, with almost no documentation. No clear provenance, no known exhibitions, no famous artist's signature. But there was one strange detail. When the piece was first donated, it came with instructions that it should never be removed from its frame. The museum complied, assuming it was just a matter of preservation. No one questioned it for decades. Until now. Detectives interviewed the museum staff, but no one seemed to know much about the painting. The curator admitted she had considered removing it from display multiple times, calling it a waste of space, but something about the donor's instructions had made her hesitate. The security footage gave little to work with. The thieves were masked, gloved, and in and out in under 3 minutes. But then came the first break. Technicians discovered traces of glue and dust near where the canvas had been cut from its frame. It seemed the frame itself had been tampered with, as if the thieves weren't after the painting at all, but what was inside it. A week later, police raided a warehouse outside the city. Inside, they found the stolen frame, stripped bare, tossed aside like trash. And hidden in a slit of wood backing, wedged deep within the frame, was something no one had expected, a folded, yellowed envelope. The envelope contained a letter. Handwritten, dated 1912. The ink was faded, but legible. It wasn't about art. It wasn't about money. It was about murder. The letter, addressed to "my dearest friend," described in cryptic detail a series of killings. It mentioned dates, initials, and a location near the old docks. At the bottom, in a trembling hand, were the words, "The river runs red, though they buried it in silence. Forgive me." The detectives were stunned. If the letter was genuine, it pointed to crimes over a century old, unsolved crimes that no one even remembered. But before they could authenticate the document, news broke. A local historian claimed that around 1912, 5 dockworkers had mysteriously vanished. The case was never solved. The media went into overdrive. Suddenly, the worthless painting became the centerpiece of a century-old conspiracy. People speculated wildly. Was the painting itself a clue? Was the donor trying to hide something? Some conspiracy theorists even suggested the museum knew about the letter all along and had kept it secret. The detectives tried to stay focused. But it became clear that whoever had stolen the painting had known about the letter hidden inside. This wasn't an accident. 2 weeks after the discovery of the letter, another strange event occurred. Another painting, from a different gallery across town, disappeared. This one didn't contain a hidden letter. But at the crime scene, police found a single piece of paper pinned to the empty frame. It had only 4 words, typed neatly. "This is not over." In a fluorescent-lit evidence room, the letter sits under a glass weight. A conservator reads aloud while a detective records every syllable. "They made us load the crates at night, said the union would never know. We worked the river when the fog was thickest. If any man asked questions, they sent him downstream. The handwriting is frail, but precise." The author mentions an overseer called the Gentleman, initials AR. The letter lists 5 nights, 5 initials, 5 disappearances. Each date matches the year 1912. Each set of initials corresponds, loosely, to names that a local historian dredges up from old dock payroll ledgers. Men who clocked in, then never clocked out. But the letter also contains a map, a crude, childlike rendering of the waterfront. There's an X scratched near a stretch of river that no longer exists, paved over decades ago to make way for luxury condos and a boardwalk food hall. The detectives have a starting point. But the second theft complicates everything. At the second gallery, there was no worthless painting. The thieves took a small 18th century portrait. Valuable, yes, but not famous. No letter hidden in its frame, no secret slit, no glue residue. Just that typed note. The alarm was cut for precisely 20 seconds, same as before. The maintenance door was jimmied with the same tool pattern. The thieves moved like they'd rehearsed it 100 times. But this time, they left a breadcrumb, a partial shoe print in the stairwell, a rare sole pattern sold by a single boutique outfitter in the city. When detectives visit the store, the owner remembers 3 buyers over the last month, all paying cash. All wearing ball caps. All silent. He does remember one thing: one of them smelled like river mud. Back at Aldridge, the curator digs through dusty donation records. The river painting came from the estate of Aldous Rayburn, an industrialist who, in the early 1900s, owned a fleet of barges on the city's river. Rayburn died in 1954. No direct descendants. No one to claim his name except the old buildings with his initials carved into the stone. AR. The Gentleman. The detectives pull photographs from the archives. Aldous Rayburn stands tall in a 3-piece suit, silver pocket watch glinting. Beside him are foremen in flat caps, expressionless. In the background, a river thick with fog. Rayburn's estate inventory lists dozens of paintings. The river scene wasn't just some random ugly duckling. It was one of several landscapes Rayburn kept in a private study. He donated most of his collection to keep the museum afloat after the war, but the river painting had one special note: do not remove from frame. If Rayburn hid a letter that implicated his operation in killings, Why donate the evidence at all? Unless the donation was a message he expected someone to find long after he was gone. Or a confession he couldn't give in life. The modern boardwalk is all neon signs and happy hour specials, but beneath the planks is the old river, slow, dark, and cold. With a warrant, divers search the spot marked on the 1912 map. The current pulls at their lines. Visibility is near zero. On the third sweep, a diver's gloved hand brushes something that doesn't feel like rock. It's smooth. Curved. A rib. Then another. By sundown, they retrieve fragments belonging to at least 2 individuals. The bones are bleached and buried in silt. The medical examiner says it's impossible to be sure, but the wear suggests men who did heavy labor. Early 1900s is plausible. The river kept their secret until it didn't. The confession letter, once a curiosity, is now a crime scene map. News of the river recovery spreads fast. Commentators argue about guilt across the decades. Was Rayburn a murderer? A bystander? A coward who admitted too late? That afternoon, the lead detective returns to her desk and finds a business card waiting. Heavy cardstock. Embossed initials, AMR. The man who left it arrives precisely at 6 p.m. tall, polite, a faint accent from schooling abroad. He introduces himself as Arthur Miles Rayburn, a distant relative. Technically not a descendant, he says, but kin through a great-uncle. He asks for privacy. I'm here for the paintings, he says. Whatever's left of them. He explains that his family held quiet auctions for Rayburn pieces over the years. A handful of works stayed in private hands. He claims the thieves are after a set of paintings that share a secret, each contains an object hidden in the frame. Letters, receipts, inventories. Together, they form a ledger Rayburn never dared write openly, a record of scrip payments, night shipments, and bribes. The river painting was just the beginning. If Arthur is telling the truth, the second theft, the random portrait, might be one of Rayburn's disguised ledgers. Or it's a decoy to muddy the pattern. When the detective asks how Arthur knows all this, he smiles sadly and slides over a faded photograph. It shows a boy standing in a study, a painting behind him, the same dull river. A man's hand rests on the boy's shoulder. A silver pocket watch catches the flash. Family stories, he says. And regrets. As the police quietly confirm that the second painting did indeed come from a Rayburn private sale in the 1970s, chaos hits. An anonymous blog publishes the letter in full, every line, every initial. The leak sparks outrage. Descendants of the missing dockworkers demand justice. Developers along the waterfront hire lawyers. The museum receives threats. Then, copycats strike. 2 small-town galleries report attempted break-ins that mirror the 20-second blackout. False alarms. Misdirections. The city is baited into seeing patterns everywhere, and resources stretch thin. The real thieves move again. At 3:02 a.m. on a rain-lashed Tuesday, a private collector's townhouse is breached. The system logs another brief outage, 20 seconds exactly. But this time a guard confronts a masked figure in the stairwell. There's a scuffle. A single shot echoes. By the time police arrive, the thief is gone, and the guard is dead. On the wall of the study, an empty space shows where a landscape once hung. The collector can barely speak. The painting? A minor work attributed to an unknown student of a Hudson River school painter. Boring, he tells them. He was planning to sell it. A forensic sweep of the study turns up something strange, tiny shavings of old wood and dried glue near the baseboard, and a sliver of yellowed paper, no larger than a fingernail. The lab pieces together the fragment. It shows the top of a column of numbers. A ledger. The thieves are racing the police, and now they've drawn blood. The detective proposes a risky plan. If the thieves are following the chain of Rayburn paintings, bait them with the next link. With Arthur's reluctant help, they identify a fourth piece believed to have been sold decades ago to a maritime insurance broker, a painting currently loaned for display at a law library with minimal security. They move it overnight to Aldridge, under the guise of preservation work. Then they leak a whisper. A curator accidentally mentioned on a private forum that the museum is reviewing late-period works from a Rayburn-connected collection. They wait. To the public, Aldridge looks ordinary. But in the bowels of the museum, the team rigs redundant alarms, thermal sensors, and a failsafe that physically locks door frames when power drops. The detective watches the live feed, sleepless. At 2:13 a.m., the cameras fuzz. Power dips. 20 seconds. At 2:14, the feed snaps back. A figure in black stands under the law library skylight, mid-step, and then the door casings slam. The thief jerks, trapped between gates that were open moments before. The detective moves with her team, guns drawn, hearts hammering. But when they reach the skylight room, the figure is gone. On the tiles, a coil of nylon rope leads to a ventilation shaft too narrow for any adult. Inside the shaft, a small drone whirs away, vanishing into darkness. On the floor beside the rope sits a single frame, emptied of its canvas. And inside the frame, wedged beneath the backing, a neatly folded sheet of paper neither the thieves nor the police expected. It's not a ledger. It's a letter addressed to Aldous Rayburn. Under the glow of a desk lamp, the detective reads aloud. The letter bears the signature of Maeve Carlin, once a young reporter for a now-defunct labor newspaper. She describes investigating Rayburn's barges, the bribes, the vanishings. She writes about a source inside Rayburn's office, a bookkeeper sick with guilt, who left clues inside frames of paintings Rayburn kept closest to his desk, because the safest place to hide a secret is where a man stares every day. At the bottom of Maeve's letter is a final line. If you're reading this, I failed to publish. But I did not fail to keep the evidence alive. Check the watch. The detective looks at Arthur. The watch. Arthur swallows. My great-uncle's silver pocket watch. It's in the museum's archive. He donated it with the paintings. They retrieved the watch from storage. It's heavy, engraved AR. The detective pries gently at the hinge. The back plate clicks. Inside, a wafer-thin roll of paper, sealed with wax. They unfurl it with tweezers. Dates. Names. Payments. A final column labeled downstream. It's not just a ledger, it's a list of deaths. The pocket watch is the heart of the confession. Before dawn, sirens cut the silence. A patrol car radios in, a fire raging at a warehouse by the river, the same warehouse where the first frame was found. By the time units arrive, the building is an inferno. Through the heat shimmer, a shadow flees on a motorbike, helmeted, silent. When the flames die, the team searches the ash. They find a charred metal box twisted open. Inside are melted remnants of paper and glue, the ghosts of frames that may never speak again. Back at the museum, the detective pins the watch's ledger to a corkboard. The names line up with the letter, with the bones in the river, with missing persons notices preserved in microfilm. A century of silence begins to hum with witnesses who can finally be heard. But a chill slides through the room as an officer hurries in, breathless. He sets a fresh envelope on the table. No postage. Hand-delivered at the service entrance minutes ago. The detective opens it. Inside is a photograph taken from somewhere high above the Aldridge roof, a view only a drone could capture. The image looks down through the skylight at the law library. The empty frame glows in the moonlight. And in the corner of the photo, a typed caption. The river keeps what it's owed. The detective flips the photo over. A second line is typed beneath the first. See you at Gallery 4.